Hello, BookTube. As some of you may know, a gigantic world-devouring hurricane is currently barreling towards the eastern seacoast of the United States. It is headed directly for the fainting couch in my living room. And I thought before it gets here, I would go out and stock up on books. It's been quite some time since I did that, 10 days. I went book hunting out in the outside world. So I thought I would do that, and of course that took me to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, a used bookstore that I've been going to for well on 5 years now. Full of used books with a sale lot outside that's full of even more used books for dirt cheap. Naturally, I went there in search of books to stock up for the hurricane. And I thought I would show you what I got. It's a great big pile of stuff, and not all of which will be staying for a number of different reasons. In a number of different ways, a number of these things will be going. But before we get on with the video, I want to offer a quick note of apology. You have all been wonderful. You have all been absolutely long-suffering, but it is more and more on my mind that none of my videos have any audio. And all of the video savants, all of the YouTubers that I know who do this for a living say that there's nothing more important than audio. It doesn't your visuals and your content. Nothing matters more than audio. If a person cannot hear your video, they will turn off even if they're interested. We have largely broken that rule. A lot of you have stuck with my videos even though they don't have any audio. And I have come to the conclusion that the kind of audio boost that I could use does not yet exist. This is yet another example where in my mind, I, the least technological person in the world, am imagining a piece of tech that does not yet exist. You would think that if I could do that on a regular basis, I was imagining VCRs before they existed, wondering, just putting pieces together of what I would like and saying, surely the technology exists to make that happen. You'd think that if I were a Futurian in the Tom Scott sense, I would be on some major multinational evil corporation making billions a year, but apparently not. Apparently some of us are out in the wild, the undomesticated type of Futurian. The kind of technology that I want is very simple. It is a microphone about this big that you plug into the headphone jack of your computer, of your laptop, and it amplifies the audio on the video that you are recording on the laptop. It does not create a separate audio track that you then have to fiddle around with and play with the treble and the bass and then lay that onto an audio because you are not going to edit your videos. Instead, it's simply going to increase the audio on the video that you're making, that you just plug in. It's just that. You just plug it in, and when you're done, you unplug it. I feel certain, as I did with VCRs, as I did with, for instance, solid disc, metal disc entertainment players, as opposed to delicate vinyl. When I was imagining those things 10, 15 years, even 20 years before they actually existed, I was saying in my mind, I am sure the technology exists, or will soon exist, to make that possible, and there would be an audience for it. I am saying that again now, that when I go online, and go to YouTube or to Amazon and start to put a foot in the water of some sort of microphone, I should not need a multimedia advanced degree from MIT in order to understand the results that I get. There should be an option where I plug it in and it increases the audio of anything that I'm recording in a video. But apparently, as far as I've been able to tell, I've looked for 100,000 times, I've asked thousands of people, and apparently that does not exist yet. So that solution is not here, which means the best I can do is to use the latest technology that I have, the technology that has, I presume, the best camera and the best microphone, and do a little shouting. I just wanted to make a note of that ahead of time. All of you have been making do with this for, what, the better part of a decade. You have been just blasting the volume levels on my videos all the way up to 11 and then forgetting about it and having your eardrums blown out the next time you play a video by someone who does use a microphone. Apparently the microphone that I want, the kind of microphone that I want, does not exist. So, and when it does, I will snap it up. And here's the point where I would ask a special favor. I would ask a special favor of the roughly 250 of you who are already in the comments field telling me that what I need is a simple lapel mic. As if that wouldn't be the first thing that would crop up in a search. Lapel mics lay down an audio track. I do not edit my videos. There are no tracks. There is no editing bar where I'm cutting out ums and ahs and curving off the ends and figuring the place for my gigantic unskippable mid-screen ads. There is no video track because I am not editing my videos. What the device, there is, as far as I can tell, no lapel mic or anything else that's like it that will simply amplify the sound that is hitting it as it goes to the video. As far as I can tell, that device does not exist. So if you're already geared up to suggest a lapel mic, kindly don't. I know about lapel mics. I've looked at them. Unless you can show me a link to something that does what I just described, kindly don't send me links. Just send me admonitions of sympathy. Anyway, I wanted to say that ahead of time because I pulled out, the laptop that I film on, and I did an actual sound test, which is something I never do. I just turn on the camera and start talking to you. I did an actual sound test, and at maximum volume with every single source of sound turned off in the room, listening carefully, I could barely hear myself. Anyway, there's no way to fix it now, not on the fly, so I will wait patiently, once again, in my life, for technology to catch up with me, the least technological person in the world. The person in the world who was saying in the 1960s, gee, it would be great if you could play whatever shows or videos you want in your home on some sort of device. The person who was saying in 1980, gee, it would be great if these vinyl records or these incredibly delicate cassette tapes, the plastic is fairly durable, but the tape inside it tangles all the time, it melts all the time. Gee, it'd be great if we had something like this that had my music or even a movie on it, but that was made of metal. It'd be a lot more durable. Apparently this is another case like that, where what I want is a plug-in microphone that allows you to hear me. Anyway, I will make do with shouting, and I guess you will make do, kind souls that you are, with maxing up the volume so that you can hear what I say. We have a stack of, now that I've got the throat clearing out of the way, I went to the Brattle. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The 10 solid days, I'm not saying that the weather was the reason I didn't go to the Brattle, because I've been to the Brattle in all kinds of weather. But nevertheless, today was the first day in 10 days, 10 solid days, where the humidity in Boston went below 85%. Now, I know that's going to seem like small peas to the rest of you who are dealing with triple-digit temperatures and have been for the whole of the summer. Nevertheless, it's my weather, so I get to complain about it. And when the humidity is over 70%, when it's 71%, 72%, that means that if you go outside and simply stand there without moving at all, you will start to sweat and pant. If the humidity is over 80%, well, that's going to be punishing. That's going to be really punishing. You're going to suffer when you go outside, regardless of how hot it is. When it's over 85%, well, advisory boards online and meteorologists in studios don't tell you anything about what happens when it goes above 85%, because it never does. It goes above 85% if you are 1 minute away from a downpour. It doesn't go above 85% and stay there in Boston. It goes that way in the jungles of Bolivia and Honduras. But it's been that way here for 10 solid days, where the humidity has not gone below 85% at all, ever, in that time, which means that when I am leaving Hyde Cottage, take the bean on a walk, and I get to, the back door or the front door, I am now in the habit, I don't even think about it anymore. I turn the knob and throw a shoulder against the door because it won't open otherwise. It's stuck, completely stuck. So I don't know what's going to happen now. It's been low humidity all day. So I presume that by tonight, if it stays this way, those doors will have shrunk back to their normal size. They won't be expanded in the humidity. So God knows what will happen. I'll throw my shoulder against the door at the top of a flight of stairs and go flying into Connecticut or something. But it was incredibly refreshing. You could feel the difference this morning. It was cool and it was dry. So I made a point of going out and about and doing some things. And that forced me, much against my will, to get a stack of books, which I'm going to show you now after enormous amounts of preliminaries. Most booktubers would be carefully looking at the clock on their camera and seeing that they have reached the minimum necessary length for their video. Phew, glad that's over. I haven't started yet. So I'll show you all of these. There are a lot of paperbacks and then a few hardcovers. And the bag, once again, the shoulder bag held up perfectly. I know that Aaron Face was the only one who cares about Bag Tuesday, but I put you through that whole psychodrama, and I feel like you deserve updates. That leather bag works perfectly. It is clearly going to be the leather shoulder bag that I use until it breaks. That's clearly going to be. Got it. Wasn't exactly what I wanted. I Frankensteined it with a knife, and now it works just perfectly. And it can take anything. Oh my God! I have yet to encounter an amount of books that won't fit in this thing. So anyway, first paperback, we got a bunch of mass market paperbacks to start with. And the first mass market paperback we got is going to bring back memories. Because I found another book exactly in this sequence with exactly this cover artist by exactly this author months and months ago. Months and months ago, I found The Pillow Fight by Nicholas Montserrat, the author of Three Corvettes and HMS Marlborough Will Enter Harbor, and especially The Cruel Sea, an author I really like. I found a novel of his called The Pillow Fight in a little mass market paperback, and I didn't end up liking it all that much. That is just natural. I'd never read it before. Nicholas Montserrat wrote his whole life. It's irrational to think that an author who does that is going to write one book after another that lives up to the greats. You'd think that'd be a cautionary tale, but this was $1, so I grabbed it anyway. I found a book called The White Raja by Nicholas Montserrat. Looks like a standard, mid 20th century historical novel adventure story. So I've never read it. To the best of my knowledge, I've never read it. The plot certainly didn't sound like it, so we will see. Then I found a few. Well, actually, yeah, there are a number of books here where I am pretty sure that the paperback that I got is not going to stand up to a read. I'm pretty sure of that. So I'll read to see how much it will do, and I will save the covers. That is the sort of compensating gesture that I use when I find an old mass market paperback that just gives up the ghost on me. I save the cover so that I have some sort of memoriam. This is Graham Greene. This is widely regarded as his best book, or one of 3 of his best books. This is the heart of the matter, with this great old cover. And you can see this thing is falling apart. I grabbed it because it was $1. I don't know. Oh, see, yeah, this is cracked. So that is not going to survive a read. I might try it just to see. There's a certain amount of exploratory fun in seeing if you can get one more read out of one of these old mass markets, but probably I will just take the cover off. It's no great loss. I have all of Graham Greene on ebook. I don't have any print and paper copies of his work. As far as I know, I don't have any of it, except maybe a volume of his nonfiction. But it's got mixed reviews. Most critics really loved it. They thought it was truly amazing. The critic who was in the best position not to like it, arguably, you could say the critic who was in the best position at least to know about its mise-en-scène, was George Orwell, who didn't like it. But I read this for the first time in exactly the right. This takes place in a fictional West African country, and one of the things about it, it's actually pretty good. My memory of most Graham Greene novels is not particularly fond, but the story here, there's more of a story here than Graham Greene usually puts in his books. The thing that I don't like about it is that it has less form than a mini golf game. It's just ridiculous. Events pinball one into the other, and whenever they start to slow down, Greene just has something happen that has nothing to do with the plot. It's not organic to the storyline at all. But I remember liking this, and I liked it even more because one of the major themes in this book, you can't escape it, it's on every page, is how pestilential it is for people to live in the setting of this book. It's boilingly hot and humid all the time. All the time. In a way that I am perfectly positioned to understand. I bet a lot of you are too in the U.S. Can really get at you. It can really change who you are as a person. And I read this in Namibia. For the first time I read this in Namibia. And Rick Bass, in his book, The White Rhinos of Namibia, I think it's called, or the Black Rhinos of Namibia. He's a great writer anyway, and he has a great long passage in that book about you think you know hot, and then you encounter this kind of hot, and it feels supernatural. Even if you're prepared for it, it feels supernatural. And that's exactly what it felt like for me. It took me 2 weeks to grow accustomed to it. 2 weeks to think that I wasn't just hallucinating somehow. It doesn't feel like Earth at all. And that's all through this book, so I'm not there anymore, and Massachusetts weather is not doing its best to imitate that anymore, so I'll give it a try. We'll see. This next one, I don't think I will even get 10 pages into this before it falls apart. I grabbed it because it was $1 and I've never seen it before. But this is an old mass market paperback of The Cross and the Sword by Evangeline Walton, whose name just came up on this channel. In my Fantasy Essentials list, I mentioned her adaptation of the Mabinogion. But she wrote a lot. She wrote a lot of other stuff, and I have found in the wild and read a lot of that other stuff. I think I've read everything by her, but most of it has been in libraries. I should say used to. I am still a member of a very good library, a library that does not de-access stuff and that will get you stuff if you want it. I mean, you don't have to be one name on a petition of 200,000 to get them to move in one direction or another. All I have to do is go up to a woman I've known for 50 years and say, could you maybe get a copy of this? I know it's not in print anymore, but you have your ways, you have your sources. I think it might be good in the collection. I would certainly like to see it, and they'll do it. The irony being they'll usually do it through the Brattle. But, I found this. This is Evangeline Walton's Viking novel. The cover doesn't really make much sense. Vikings didn't use those kinds of swords. They didn't dress in their PJs. I don't know what that beanie is that he has on. I don't know why he's burning his own ship. And also, I don't know, is the ravished wench there? Has she been too many times to IHOP? It looks like he's having trouble hefting her. It's just a weird cover all in all. But this is falling apart. This is just falling apart. So we'll see how much we see. See, that is just, we'll see how much reading I get out of it. Might very well be none at all. Then this next one, it's hammered together a little bit better, probably because it wasn't read as much. But it's science fiction. It's vintage science fiction. I don't feel right when I go to the Brattle. I don't feel right unless I get vintage science fiction and vintage mystery. It just doesn't feel right anymore. Fortunately, the Brattle will provide. So I found this, The Furies, by Keith Roberts, who wrote a science fiction novel called, what was it called? Pavane? Some of you science fiction fantasy fans, especially vintage science fiction fans, might know better than I was. I loved it. It was about a sort of an alternate version of a Catholic Church triumphant. I think that's what it was called, Pavane. This is his first novel about giant wasps, and about a nuclear test goes wrong, it opens a fissure in the ocean, a mountain comes crashing out of that fissure, and suddenly there are giant wasps everywhere. So this is a little bit late for Animals Attack for Carb August, but I think this was his debut novel. I don't think I've ever read it. So I was glad to find it. Always up for vintage science fiction. Then this is going to be a little bit deceptive because this looks a little more solid than these others, but I know this publisher, I know this kind of mass market paperback. This is going to fall apart on me. This is The Promise by Chaim Potok. This is his sequel to The Chosen. And I have read The Chosen a number of times, so I figure I didn't find a copy of The Chosen next to this one. I figure, I probably know it well enough so that I can this follows the two main characters of The Chosen. Two different sects of Judaism. They represent two different sects of Judaism, and as you can see from this rather ham-handed cover, two different social futures. This follows the two of them. I think it takes up right where The Chosen leaves off. But I think I remember The Chosen well enough. I really like it, so I got this, but this is not going to, it looks perfect, but it's not going to last. It's going to blow apart just like the others. Then this will not last. Not at all. I will save the cover. I've never seen this cover in the wild before. This is, I think, James Michener's first book, or right up there. It's in his first 5. This is The Fires of Spring, an old mass market paperback that really has seen better days. This is largely autobiographical. The main character is James Michener. So this has lots, if I remember correctly, I read this in a paperback that didn't look anything like this, and then I reread a chunk of it in an ebook. I have all of Michener in ebook. If I remember correctly, if I'm not mixing it up with the million other books that James Michener wrote, then this is the main character is pretty much him, and that therefore, because of that, the book has tons and tons of here are my insights on life type digressions that I have very little patience for, less patience now than ever. But we'll see. I wanted to save it. I will save the cover anyway. Then an old historical novel. This is a historical novel set in the American Revolution, which is a comparative rarity, at least that I've seen. And most of the ones that I've read are terrible. I have no idea about this. This is by Bart Spicer, and it's called Brother to the Enemy. And it's just a cheesy old, fairly good condition, but this won't last. None of these things will last. The last one will last. About Benedict Arnold and George Washington and made-up characters that go between. So we'll see. Always up for it. It might be good. Then we have the Vintage Murder Mystery, an author that apparently had a big career. I've never heard of him. I've never read anything by him. The author is George Bagby. I think that's a pen name. And the title is Murder's Little Helper. which is a pretty bizarrely callous title when you realize what the book is about. I wonder if that was its original title. This came out in 1972. Oh, well, no. The copyright is 1963. The first printing is 1972. I wonder if that means it came out with a different title somewhere else first. The story starts off with a body being fished out of the river in New York, and it's a dead pregnant woman. And the cops in the precinct, including the main character, Schmidt. Yeah, Inspector Schmidt. They think, well, maybe this is just someone, who had old-fashioned ideas, a pregnant woman who had no husband, had no respectability, knew that her name would be ruined, that sort of thing. Very old-fashioned ideas, and decided to kill herself first, as opposed to face that kind of disgrace. Which makes the title a little bit callous, more than a little bit callous. But this is a New York police mystery that I've never read. I don't know if it's part of a series. We'll see if it's any good. And this next one, I guess, counts as a mass market paperback. I didn't really think of it that way. This will hold up forever. I know that because I have a whole shelf of them that I've had for 40 years. They hold up just fine. They hold up forever. This is The Devils by Dostoevsky, translated by Michael Katz, who did recent translations of Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov. This is another one, probably my least favorite of Dostoevsky's, 5 big novels. This is probably my least favorite one. I know that fans of it tend to call it funny. A humorous Dostoevsky, a droll humor, a dark humor, but still a humor. We will see. We will see. I have now a couple of different translations of this thing that I have found in the last 5 or 6 months. So I think that's sort of the bookish gods pushing me to reread it. And I'm familiar with Michael Katz as a translator, very much so, but I don't think I've ever read him in this. I don't think he was the first person to translate this book for Oxford. Either that, or when I think about it, I'm thinking of the Penguin translations. Well, neither which was him. So now I have it. It will go with my Oxfords. Then we have a couple more paperbacks, then we'll move on to the hardcovers. And the first paperback it was in perfect condition. I had to get it. It's the third Rumpole omnibus. But the first one with Christopher Green doing the artwork as a full painting rather than just heads. The first Rumpole omnibus and the second Rumpole omnibus have just balloon heads of characters on them. This is actually a painting. There you have Rumpole with his cheroot. There you have Chateau Thames Embankment, and the Oxford Book of English Verse, the Quiller Couch edition, if you please. And this is the one that I would want as a paperback. I have all these in ebooks, but I would want one of this for a paperback, because sometimes curling up with a Rumpole book, a print and paper book, is the only thing that cures what ails you. For me, anyway. This is a favorite character of mine, and this has some great stories. This includes the 3 volumes, Rumpole and the Age of Mysteries, Rumpole a la carte, and Rumpole and the Angel of Death, all of which I have here in separate volumes. But sometimes these big omnibus volumes were the ways that I encountered these things. And these have some wonderful stories, just wonderful. Rumpole and the Tap End, where a judge makes a horrible faux pas about women and then has to backtrack painfully for the whole course of the story. Absolutely hilarious. Who gets the tap end of the tub? A very old quandary that most readers now born in the 21st century won't even remember. If you're going to bathe together, who gets the tap end? Who has the divots digging into their back? This has Rumpole and the Quality of Life. And Rumpole a la carte, where he helps the 5-star Michelin chef Jean-Pierre O'Higgins. And a whole bunch of other things. Rumpole for the prosecution. Rumpole only defends. He never prosecutes. So Rumpole for the prosecution is terrific. And this also has, perhaps, my favorite. Rumpole and the Quality of Life has my favorite sequence in any Rumpole story. In the story and in the great Leo McKern adaptation. But probably my favorite story, my favorite single Rumpole story is Rumpole and the Bubble Reputation, where he deals with that prime bottler of historical bilge water, Lady Amelia Nettleship, and her wretched prose, her wretched historical novels like Lord Stingo's Fancy. And this has all of those in there, and it's in perfect condition, so I grabbed it. Then this next one I have not seen in forever. Once Upon a Time. I had a science fiction friend. He and I were deep in the weeds of science fiction and fantasy once upon a time, decades ago, and he praised the daylights out of this book. This is an author that he never praised, and I hardly ever praised this author either. I haven't even seen it since those days. It must be 40 years since I saw this thing. When did this come out? It must be 40 years. 1980, 43 years. This is Expanded Universe by Robert Heinlein. This is a gigantic collection of fiction, yes, but also nonfiction. There are little bits and pieces all over here. It's a big miscellaneous collection. My friend said when it first came out, this is incredibly serious. This is a serious publication by Heinlein, an important volume. I don't think hindsight bears that out at all, but I barely glanced at it at the time. I'm sure that I know the stories that are in here, but the nonfiction pieces, I doubt that I will. Heinlein says, let's see here. Aside from this foreword, the items in this book are arranged in the order in which written, each with a comment as to how and why it was written. Money, usually, but also, well, money. Then a bridging comment telling what I was writing and doing between that item and the next. The span is 40 years, but these are not my memoirs of those 4 decades. The writing business is not such as to evoke amusing memoirs. And then in parentheses he says, yes, I do mean you, and you, and you, and especially you. A writer spends his professional time in solitary confinement, refusing to accept telephone calls and declining to see visitors, surrounded by a dreary forest of reference books and somewhat organized papers. The high point of his day is the breathless excitement of waiting for the postman. The low point is usually immediately thereafter. So I will pick through this. I probably will pick through this for the nonfiction pieces. I doubt I'll read this cover to cover, but I'm glad to have it. Never seen it before. And then we have the hardcovers. And a lot of these are second chances. The Brattle often provides me with second chances. The first one being a literal second chance from not a point of reconsidering a book, but a point of just asking myself why on earth I got rid of it. I must have sent it to one of you. I checked. This is not my original copy, but I loved it. And if I remember, I will leave my review down below. This is Maya Jasnov's book on Joseph Conrad, The Dawn Watch, which I loved. I thought this was fantastic. No idea why I didn't keep it. I think probably if I had to isolate a reason for my thinking as to why I would get rid of such a thing, it was that this did not do the main thing I was hoping it would do. I was hoping that this would be the thing that finally made me like Conrad. I'm perfectly open for that sort of thing. I'm open for a reconsideration of book or essay of some kind to do that. Perfectly open with that. And I know that in 2 generations ago, Conrad had tons of devoted fans, so I'd be connecting with their writings as well. But as much as I love this book, it never did that. I was waiting the whole time. I read this when I got the advanced copy, and then I'm sure you can see the finished copy in the background of videos of mine if you would go back 5,000 videos. I read the finished copy. I wrote a review, recommended it a lot. I think it ranked rather highly on my year-end list of biographies. The one thing it didn't do was send me back to Conrad. So maybe a reread will after all this time. Who knows? Then this next one is in a little bit dodgy shape. I'm going to clean it up because I got rid of my last hardcover copy of this. I give it away all the time. This is Winter's Tale by Mark Halperin. And there is our very young author. Good Lord. Mark Halperin's on my mind because he has a new book out this year. The Sea and the Stars, I think is the name of it, or The Seas and the Stars. This is the book that really catapulted him into the public consciousness. This is such an amazing, amazing book. And I tend not to get mass market paperbacks. This one I find it because I love it so much that the more I love a book, the more I bear down on it, and the mass market paperbacks tend not to survive. So I found this hardcover, and as you can see, it's ripped around the edges, and it's got spotting, the kind of spotting stuff. I'm going to see how much of this I can fix. Clean the whole volume up, reinforce the dust jacket from the back so the rips aren't quite so egregious, and then put a plastic cover over it, and see if maybe this will be my copy to sit on my shelf as opposed to going anywhere. This next one came with a plastic cover. It's in perfect condition. I always give this away too because every time I talk about it on this channel, somebody pipes up and says the usual. That sounds fantastic. It sounds like exactly what I need. I live in a book desert. I don't trust the internet. Could you find me a copy? And I do. But this is H.F. Saint's novel, The Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which is terrific. This is not meant metaphorically at all. This is not about upper middle class Connecticut divorce. This is about a young guy, a guy in his 30s, who goes to a scientific exhibit, a scientific demonstration, mainly to impress a girl. And when it goes wrong, he wakes up and finds that he's invisible. the explosion, the experiment gone wrong has turned him invisible. And he can't control it. He can't turn it off. So he has to get back to his car. He has to drive back to the city. He has to get back into his apartment. He has to figure out how to get a job, how to eat before home food deliveries, all that sort of stuff. And the government's hunting him. The government quickly finds out. They quickly realize that someone was at ground zero of this mistake and turned invisible. And they see the great benefits that might involve there. It's fantastic. Don't be, if you're if you're one of the 10 people that watched the dumb Chevy Chase movie adaptation, don't be fooled by it. The movie adaptation was rotten, but this is terrific. It's an adventure story that absolutely will not let you down. And then finally, the last thing we have here is a big anthology. I rather like these things. This is, again, in dodgy condition, but I'm going to put a cover over it and do what I can to make it look a little better. This is a big treasury of Esquire magazine, edited by Arnold Gingrich. See, this has got sort of pieces falling off it, but I'll fix that. To the best of my ability, I will fix that. I'll clean all this up, get all that schmutz off here, and see if I can make this just... It doesn't have to look good for me, but I recently found that thing right up there next to Conan. That is the previous anthology of selections from Esquire magazine over the decades. And I really enjoyed that book. I really did. So when I found a bigger one with all sorts of stuff that I'm sure I've never read, I grabbed it. Now I will just have to... This is a roster of all the names that are included in here. Just amazing. It's everybody who's anybody. So that does it. That was my Brattle haul prior to the hurricane, which is bearing down on Boston as we speak. So we have the Esquire Treasury, a little bit rough condition, but I'll do what I can. The Memoirs of an Invisible Man, always great to find this, but in perfect condition with a plastic covering, even better. Then Winter's Tale by Mark Halperin. I've been to another world and come back. Listen to me. We have Dawn Watch, Maya Jasnov's book on Joseph Conrad. We have Expanded Universe, collection of Robert Heinlein pieces, fiction and non. The third Rumpole Omnibus in paperback. The Michael Katz translation of The Devils by Dostoevsky, about how mean and evil atheists are. Murder's Little Helper, a murder mystery that I'll gobble up in one sitting. Brother to the Enemy, American Revolution War novel. Let's see here. The Fires of Spring, sort of a doomed paperback. Pretty sure most of these paperbacks are doomed. The Promise by Chaim Potok. The Furies. This is not doomed. This could stand a read. A lot of these old science fiction paperbacks that I read for Garbagas stood up perfectly well. The Cross and the Sword. This is not going to stand up. It's falling apart as I put it on the pyramid. The Heart of the Matter. Ditto by William Green. And finally, The White Raja by Nicholas Montserrat. And we will just see what we will see. When did the White Raja come out? 1961. See, the basic plot outline of The White Raja is very similar to a book that I really, really like by Stephen Becker, The Blue-Eyed Shawn. But there's almost no chance that this book is going to be as good as that. Almost no chance. So, and Becker wrote a bunch of books like that. The Blue-Eyed Shawn is just his best book. What I wouldn't give to have a paperback copy of that. Didn't find it today. But also he wrote a book called Red Bandit that's amazingly good along these lines. You know, white man falls into a strange world and rises to the top through daring and, innate superiority or whatever questionable justification is involved there. If you're going to do that, I really want you to do it well, and Becker does it really well. So I don't know what to expect from this Nicholas Montserrat, and I don't know that I will find out right away. In every Brattle haul, there's always a kind of a silent ranking going on in my head of what I'm going to get to first. It's a kind of a ritual of mine that when I get a Brattle book haul, I get to something that night. I add at least one thing from that pile to my night's reading. And looking at these, I don't know. It'll all depend on what I feel like later tonight. I think I'm leaning towards the murder mystery, just because it'll be one and done. It'll be over in no time at all, and I'll know whether or not I like it. I'll know whether or not to look for more of this author. But anyway, I will report back. That is my Brattle haul for today, and who knows what'll be left of Massachusetts when this hurricane is done. We shall see. They didn't seem to take it very seriously at the Brattle. Perhaps it was me they didn't take very seriously. I don't know. But I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you.